All right, it's live on KEXP. I'm your host, John Richards here, listener-powered independent KEXP broadcasting from Seattle. And these performances are made possible in part from donations from listeners like you and viewers like you. And I am so happy to be joined by my friend Ben Gibbard today. Hey, Ben, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. I saw you were just on one of the late-night shows. You were on with Colbert. Is that right?
We were. And we were very excited that while we were taping for a later broadcast, that Michael Pollan was the guest that they were filming. Yeah. And then Dave went down to talk to him. We wanted to meet him because we were really excited, right? Because we love Michael Pollan. And Dave was telling him about some, I don't think he'll mind me saying, some psychedelic therapy that he had been doing. And then Michael Pollan went on air and talked about, not naming Dave, about, I just talked to a guy backstage, and Dave was like, what the hell?
Well, lesson learned.
Yeah, exactly.
Lesson learned.
Yeah.
Is it weird to work really hard to play one song?
Yeah, it's like being shot out of a cannon.
Yeah.
Because you're just sitting backstage in a nice room with food and drinks, and then they're like, all right, it's time to go. And then you go through the TV. You've been watching it on the TV, and then like, I went through the TV, and now I'm in the TV. And you have to play the song in 3.5 minutes. And it's just very
well. The clip I saw, it sounded great. So
good
for you guys. Good to see you playing live again.
Absolutely, it feels good.
All right, you're here alone. We let the band sleep in, and but you're gonna play. I'm interested to hear how this first song is because I only know the studio version and video of this song. So
yeah, I've been referring to this as the Mountain Goats version of this song.
Oh, nice.
It feels like now it feels like a John Darnielle song when I play it on acoustic.
Perfect.
It's been a battle just to wake and greet the day when they all disappear like sugar in my coffee. Like sugar in my coffee. A hint of sweetness, but the bitterness remains. The acidity devouring my body. Devouring my body. But I am learning to let go of everything I tried to hold too long, 'cause they all explode like Roman candles. I used to feel everything like a flame. Now it's a struggle just to feel anything. To feel anything. I watch the world from a window on a hill. Everyone moving as I'm standing still. I'm standing still. But I am learning to let go of everything I tried to hold too long, 'cause they all explode like Roman candles. Ah, but I am learning to let go of everything I tried to hold too long, 'cause they all explode like Roman candles. Like Roman candles.
Ben, if I had to do this over again, I'd have some like poppets. Remember those fireworks? And,
Yeah.
I'd have the whole crew here just throwing them at
The poppets were the only fireworks that we were allowed as kids. My parents are very risk averse.
So no
and
Roman
every
candle?
once in a while we were allowed the sparklers.
Yeah.
But, you have to get the picture of like a suburban early 80s neighborhood where there are just illegal fireworks happening up and down the block, and I'm just sitting there with poppets going pop, 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 and holding a single sparkler and being sad that our parents were so responsible.
Well, I was left to have Roman candle wars with my friends. We would get trash can tops as shields and then go to the playground where there were other children and fire Roman. And I think where was my mom at the?
Yeah, I remember that we did with some of the kids in the neighborhood. We did play a game like how long can you hold a black cat?
Oh yeah,
you remember this game where you just hold it and then let it go at the last second? And then some of the kids in the neighborhood determined that you could connect a bunch of fireworks or tape them together.
Yes.
And, mayhem ensued, as one would expect.
Well, if you haven't seen the video to Roman Candles, it is phenomenal and scary at the same time. You have fireworks going off, Roman candles being fired. The video is great. I saw a kind of behind the scenes thing you posted as well, which is super funny. Whose idea was it to be so literal with the fireworks?
Well, it was my idea in the sense that I had this vision for a video that was just a very kind of rough concept of like, I just want explosions to be happening. And I immediately thought of our friend Lance Bangs, who, is a wonderful filmmaker and video director in his own right, but he also, at this point, sadly, might be most famous for being the guy who's throwing up in Jackass all the time. Oh, if you've ever seen a Jackass movie and there's a guy with white hair with a camera throwing up because something disgusting is happening, that's Lance, right? But I figured, we'd worked with Lance a long time ago and we'd kept in touch, and I was like, if anybody's going to get this concept and be able to execute it, it's going to be the guy who hangs out with those dudes, right? So we went to Portland and shot it, and it was once we started getting into the actual explosions part, it felt a little lawless. It felt like, and I think the version that is the video, we had enough pyro to do like 2 or 3 more takes, and the pyro guy was just like, I just put it all in for this one. So it was 5 times as loud. There were, just a crew guy standing kind of bored looking, just shooting Roman candles between us, and it's like, this guy is really like, this guy is the guy between me and like a 3rd-degree burn.
That's right.
And thankfully he must have done this before, because he was really good at aiming them.
Well, it's kind of the perfect visual to the song too, just the lyrics. Just can you talk a little bit about the song? I read something you said about kind of leaning into all the mayhem around this world.
Yeah, I think that even before the pandemic, life felt like it was kind of coming off the rails a bit, right? And that could have been due to any number of things, be it the previous administration, if that's your persuasion. It could be the slow degradation of our environment. It could be the slow rollback of, legislation that, we're all seeing happening right now. But I think, the pandemic obviously kind of exacerbated a lot of people's feelings of anxiety and feeling out of control, feeling that, in reality, we have no control, right? But during kind of functioning times or pseudo-functioning times, we're at least given the impression that we do have some control, right? So for me, the song is really in the chorus. The message is in the chorus of just like, I'm learning to let go of the fact that I have no control over, what's going to happen on a day-to-day basis. I have no control over, my relationships, and I have no control over people dying, So, I think that, as with many of our songs or many of the things that I write about, I tend to the verses tend to be a little maudlin, and then hopefully there's like a ray of light in there that just kind of cuts through it. And and it's like, hey, look, everything's kind of crappy, but, we're going to get through this. I'm going to get through this. You're going to get through this. So that's the core of the message of the song.
It's a great song. And the new record is called Asphalt Meadows. Congrats on that, by the way.
Thank you.
And you're going to play an older song. Now, I don't know how older is. It's like 10, over 10 years old. Is that older?
12 years is older, 12? Yeah. I mean, it feels like just yesterday, so it still feels new to me.
Right.
It might be new to you.
Do you remember that, though? You look back, because we're doing our year retrospectives, and you think, like, I was listening to this, 3 years after it came out, but back when I was a kid, that seemed like 100 years ago.
Yeah, well, and I think that's because when you're a teenager, a year is a much smaller percentage of your life, right? Yeah. A day is a shorter percentage of your life. So, a school year felt like 5 years.
Yeah.
And now I live across the street from a school, and I'm like, oh, school's starting. And then it's like, what happened? Where are the kids? Oh, school year's over. Like, things just kind of fly by,
All right, let's hear an older song then. Right.
Cath, she stands with a well-intentioned man, but she can't relax with his hand on the small of her back. And as the flashbulbs burst, she holds a smile like someone would hold a crying child. And soon everybody will ask, what became of you? When your heart was dying fast and you didn't know what to do. Cath, it seems that you live in someone else's dream, in a hand-me-down wedding dress, with the things that could have been all repressed. But you said your vows, and you closed the door on so many men who would have loved you more. And soon everybody will ask, what became of you? When your heart was dying fast and you didn't know what to do. The whispers that it won't last roll up and down the pews. But if their hearts were dying that fast, they'd have done the same as you. And I'd have done the same as you.
It's a pretty song, Cath, from Ben Gibbard here on KEXP. And do you remember hearing yourself for the first time on the radio?
Yeah, I remember. I think it probably had to have been maybe up in Bellingham on KUGS.
Uh-huh.
And it is a pretty kind of surreal experience the first time it happens.
Yeah.
Because I think growing up, especially with, if you're growing up in an area that doesn't have a listener-supported station, a college station, something like that, you're used to hearing kind of just big rock acts all the time, just big music, pop music. So I would associate the radio or people on the radio with being famous, because most of the people who were being played on the radio in some form or fashion were famous, like in the 80s when I was growing up, because I wasn't listening to college radio in Bremerton, But then, when I was living in Bremerton, I had a friend who could get KGRG. They lived in like a valley. And I remember having this experience of like, we would go to his house and just listen to KGRG and we would tape it. And we were blown away that you could like call the radio station and a guy would pick up the phone. And not only that, but it would be the person who was on the radio.
Right.
That was kind of it seems like, kind of a concept that seems like, well, of course. But when you grow up listening to corporate radio, you couldn't get anybody on the phone,
Right.
So, so I think that kind of my first experiences were like probably KUGS, maybe even KCMU, and I think as an independent artist coming up, you kind of feel like you're really part of something when you're getting played on those stations, and so it felt really validating and rewarding. You know,
we'd go to a hill in Spokane to get KAGU. It was a Gonzaga station at the time, and we had the same thing. Like, hey, Jeff, my buddy, let's ask for ministry. Jesus built my hot rod. So we do that every week. I think back now, I was that guy calling that same dude every Friday, asking for ministry.
Well, and you forget that. Well, maybe not forget, but at the time, anybody who was on the radio was like an adult.
Yeah.
You know, they were like a DJ, and obviously we knew it was a college station, but in our teenage minds, we saw these people as adults, and in actuality, they were just barely not children.
Yeah,
you know,
they were a few years older than
Yeah, exactly. They were at most 2 years older than us. Yeah.
You and your band too. You were one of those bands that public radio and college radio embraced. Then you crossed over commercial radio, played some of your songs as well. Same with the label, it's like independent label, big label. And you've been able to keep both those, I think, audiences and formats really happy. You know, I think you've been true to your music is what I'm trying to say. Is it that clearly you didn't conform for these things. They just sort of happened, right? Like that you made your songs, bigger stations played you, bigger labels got involved. Did that ever influence how you looked at music or how you played music?
Well, I think when we were on Barsook before we signed to Atlantic, and some commercial stations were starting to play us a little bit here and there, but it was pretty. Those ads were few and far between. When we signed to Atlantic, and the first song that we were releasing as a single was "Soul Meets Body," and to Atlantic's credit, if people are familiar with that song, the chorus doesn't come in for like a minute and a half. The structure is not. It's not conducive to what people would think a traditional radio song would be. Nor was "I Will Possess Your Heart," which is like 8 minutes long. And to Atlantic's credit, they were always really like, "Yeah, cool, whatever. We'll work it out." And I think honestly, probably maybe some of the reasons that we had success across these formats is that people like to think that there should be rules for how a radio song should be constructed or what will work on the radio. And more times than not, that's just not true. It's like if I can be so bold, the song is good and it's speaking to people in that time and place and people are reacting to it, it doesn't need to fit this format of like, okay, well, after 30 seconds, chorus has to come in. And if not, we have to da-da-da-da. So I don't know. I feel very fortunate that we've been able to kind of live between both worlds because, we certainly appreciate the exposure that some of the larger stations have given us, but we all grew up listening to stations like KCMU, which obviously KEXP and KUGS and KGRG. I mean, these are the stations that kind of taught us about the music that was formative and influential for us. To be able to be accepted in some way in those stations is really meaningful to us.
I think the first guy who said I should check you out was Jason Hughes, owner of Sonic Boom and one-time host of Audio Oasis and The Young and the Restless over at the end. And I ended up taking over those shows as well. And the theme song was a Death Cab.
Oh, was it really?
Song as well, yeah, for years.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Years. So I always associate that early, we had the fax and our voting yes time to sort of my discovery of local music, like how much there was in the Northwest and how much was crossing over at the time. It's amazing how many bands come out of here and people are kind of shocked they're a Northwest band.
Yeah, well, there were kind of dark days in the late 90s.
There was.
It was dark days. I mean, it was.
I agree.
It's like, obviously everything, the nation, the world's attention on Seattle in the early 90s was what it was. And then there was this kind of like odd hangover where, there was a lot of money in the music industry thanks to, depending if you want to give credit, like boy bands and, CD sales and everything. So when we first started, there was still these kind of like weird talent scouts like hanging out in the Northwest, kind of coming out of the shadows and ending up at shows. And you would play a show with some band on a Tuesday at Moe's or something like that. And they'd be like, yeah, we've got scouts coming out from 3 majors. And like, you guys have never played in Portland, So it was kind of a weird time. And obviously there were things starting to kind of like things were starting to gestate a bit at that point. But it feels like once we kind of got into the new millennium, I feel like the focus started shifting away from larger labels kind of coming down and trying to kind of like eat everything in a city, and these kind of scenes starting to kind of happen more organically. And to me, it seems like, the early aughts into, a pre-YouTube, pre-streaming, proto-Pitchfork era was kind of the last era of independent music that there were regional sounds.
Yeah.
That you could live in an area and there'd be like, okay, well, Chapel Hill sounds like this. Seattle kind of sounds like this. Omaha kind of sounds like this. And I think that if there's one thing I kind of lament about the kind of passage of time, well, there are many things about the passage of time that are not great as you get older, but I do long for a time when scenes had a sound, and I feel like in Seattle in that late 90s, early aughts, there was kind of this thing kind of forming around a bunch of bands, us included, that maybe we weren't all friends, maybe we didn't all drink together, but there was kind of this like unspoken series of influences that were kind of driving everybody.
If you could teleport to one time of a music scene in a location, what would it be? You could go.
I can go anywhere?
You can go anywhere at any time.
Okay. I think I'd probably want to be at one of those early exploding Plastic Inevitable shows, like a Velvet Underground Nico, like a Nico era Velvet Underground kind of chaotic light show band is playing. It probably wouldn't. In my mind, it had been incredible, but
right.
Probably it was probably garbage.
It's probably
right?
a mess.
It was probably a mess, right? But I think that's something I probably would have really liked to experience.
Yeah, I'm like a mid to late 70s New York, and then I have the same idea, but it was probably super dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have survived going to CBGB's,
but in my mind, I asked someone that question. If you go to any show, and they're like, "Oh, it'd be Folsom Prison from Johnny Cash." I'm like, "Well, wouldn't you be in prison if that was the show?" You're like, "Oh yeah."
I would have had to do hard time, but I would have been at that show.
It would have been worth it. All right, Ben Gibbard's here, and we got another one from the new record, Asphalt Meadows. Yes.
Yes, I'm gonna check my tuning, and then I'll be good to go. Okay. In every movie I watch from the 50s, there is only one thought that swirls around my head now. And that's that everyone there on the screen, yeah, everyone there on the screen, well, they're all dead now. They're all dead now. And it ain't easy living above, and I can't help but keep falling in love with bones and ashes. With bones and ashes. And when the color's too bold and bright, I'm daydreaming in black and white until it passes. Till it passes. And I wanna know the measure from here to forever. And I wanna feel the pressure of God or whatever. I know these days it's so hard to relax. You gotta hold a gun to my back to make me smile. To make me smile. And the only way I seem to cope is by trying to hold on to hope, if just for a while. If just for a while. And I wanna know the measure from here to forever. And I wanna feel the pressure of God or whatever. And now it seems more than ever, there's no hands on the levers. And I wanna feel the pressure of God or whatever. Holy rollers, keep rolling while the searchers keep scrolling. And I wanna know the measure from here to forever. And I wanna feel the pressure of God or whatever. 'Cause now it seems more than ever there's no hands on the levers. And I wanna feel the pressure of God or whatever. Or whatever.
Here to Forever, the song, kind of like Roman Candles, finding some hope in that song.
A little bit.
It starts a little grim, Ben.
A little bit.
A little
Well,
bit.
you know.
Everyone's dead. A little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of, that first line is kind of like a nod to my wife, Rachel, who whenever we're watching like an old movie or something like that, we have this inside joke where she'll just turn to me and go, "That dog's dead now." That old man, he's been dead for a long time.
I love that so much.
But so I felt like, in such a heavy song, I wanted to start out with something a little bit humorous.
Yes.
Slightly, because it's weird. It's like, I think I love old movies and French, Italian New Wave. I'm always falling in love with kind of, old kind of film stars and stuff. And I think that one of the beautiful things about that format, about films, is that, people can kind of live forever. You kind of freeze people in this particular time and place. And even though they've been gone for a long time, you're kind of able to they're able to live forever in some kind of way through this work.
Oh, you could argue that with music too.
With music too.
Right?
Yeah.
We went for a walk the other day, and my wife turned to me. She's like, "Hey, what's on your mind?" I said, "Oh, I was just thinking about how everyone in this neighborhood will be dead in like 50 to 75 years, and all these new people will live in the house."
Yeah.
Like, what were you thinking about? She's like, "That it's a nice day."
Like, what kind of weirdo is going to live in our house in 80 years?
Hey, are you I don't know if I've asked this, but are you a space guy? Do you follow, like
when you say space guy,
like
what
space telescopes and asteroids and just like space news, and like the new telescope for me. I was thinking about you while you're playing that song. Like for me, I was kind of down the day these images came out, and I was looking down here on Earth clearly at all the things that bring you down, and seeing those images completely turned me around. Just this idea that everybody's dead and gone, and we're seeing images coming in 300, million years after the Big Bang, gave me some weird hope that feeling smaller gave me hope. I don't know why. Shouldn't it do the opposite? It didn't.
Yeah, hope was not my. That's not my first. My first thought.
Yes.
But more so, I'm really taken. The short answer is yes. Although I'm not one of those people who's like I don't stan. Like telescopes.
No, I don't.
Some people are like telescope stands. They're like, oh man,
just send me
Hubble.
the images on my
I'm
phone.
a Hubble guy myself.
Yeah.
Hubble guy
too.
No, but I'm fascinated with when you see images like that. You're really kind of given the very. It hits you right in the face that we are so insignificant.
Yes.
And then my second thought is like, there's got to be somebody else out there.
Yeah.
And to me, that's, if there is an afterlife of some sort, and if there is some kind of deity and you get to ask them a series, if you're allowed like 3 questions about life when you were finished, I feel like 2 of them would be, who killed Kennedy? And is there life out in the universe outside of us? It'd be like at least 2 of the 3 questions.
2 of the 3.
As I'm saying that, though, I'm realizing there's a lot of other things I probably should ask.
The Kennedy one's good,
that.
though. Yeah.
It's just
important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I read somewhere about a CIA study that determined that the max amount of people who could keep a secret was 3. Only 3 people.
Only 3.
So a conspiracy would have to include 3 or less people for no one to say anything, right?
Right.
So if that's the case, then it probably is just exactly how it seemed to happen. But
I'll argue, though, there are some mysterious deaths that could have been the +3.
Well, yes,
around
that's
that.
right.
So
right,
if we're going to get into this,
we don't know.
The math
but then,
changes.
But then, who are the 3 people who had to have those people killed?
This
right?
is a problem.
If we're assuming, we can spend all day talking about this, and I would love to spend the next hour. But there's a conspiracy hour with John and Ben. Is this a new podcast we're doing?
John and Ben
where we kind of American idiot conspiracies
and point out to each other the facts that we have in our heads. Now wait a sec.
And I think that a lot of these should be kind of prefaces. Well, I thought I heard one time that
they all should be like that.
Yeah, there's no source material. It's just I think I heard a guy say one time.
Oh my God, that'd be so good. Hey, did you hear? That's how it all starts.
It kind of sounds like, honestly, it sounds like a very popular podcast that will go nameless.
Yes.
That just to bring on people and go, yeah, I heard one time a guy said.
Imagine just the space part. Like, yeah, I heard they didn't, it was Stanley Kubrick. He did the whole thing on the moon. Yeah,
I heard the same thing.
Yeah,
I heard the same thing, John. Well, as far as I'm concerned, the case is closed.
The case is closed. I heard that. There's only 3 people up there.
Yeah, it was Kubrick and the camera guy, right? And then I guess somebody from the CIA. It must have been just those 3.
I'll get started on the podcast right away. I'm here with Ben Gibbard. They got Death Cab's got a new record, Asphalt Meadows, and I love everything I've heard so far from it. Real quick too, I meant to ask you about this Yoko Ono tribute album. Just incredible work. You did an insane mix of artists to cover these songs. Did you contact all the art? Did you have it in mind? Who you wanted covering these songs? What was your involvement with it?
So it was my idea to start with, and then thankfully David Newgarden, who manages Yoko, got on board, and then Steve Robalski, who is not only our A&R person at Atlantic, but runs a label called Canvasback, a subsidiary of Atlantic. Like, I'd love to do this. Let's work on this project. So it went from. Sometimes you have ideas and you're like, that would be kind of fun. And then before I knew it was happening, I was like, oh no, I've got to start emailing people. So as with, I'm sure a lot of these projects, you kind of make a big list and you start kind of going through people. And, I would be lying if I said that the original list of artists that I had, that everybody got back to me and we all had tracks within X amount of time, and it was,
right.
And that was the record. But really what's more interesting and kind of, in the end, much more fulfilling and rewarding was that so many people came on along the way that I found out were huge Yoko fans and had heard about the project and wanted to be involved with it. David Byrne is a perfect example. It was like I'd never met David before, and I just got an email from him through a mutual friend saying like, hey, I heard you're doing this. I'd love to do a song. I was like,
no.
Yeah, I think we can find the space for you. Let me check we got room for one more. I think we can fit one more in there. So to me, I think, the most exciting thing about the project, the most rewarding part was just kind of how the end product became something that I had not expected, but that it was even better than probably what I had imagined.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I think you did a great job. I'm sure she felt good about it. And
I don't know if she's heard it. I wanted to do this project not so that I could get invited to Christmas at the Dakota, But I hope that it sounds like, at least what I've heard through Sean, that they're very happy with the project. Great. So that's all that matters.
Cool. All right. Speaking of other people's songs, you're going to end with a cover? Yes.
Yeah, I've been I kind of goof on this one every once in a while, and I was just playing it in soundcheck and thought it might be kind of nice to play.
You were on years ago, and your cover of "They Don't Know" from Kirsty MacColl was one of my favorite covers that's been done in the studio. So,
thank you.
I still play it.
I love Kirsty MacColl. It's like speaking of like people who have passed who I'm in love with. Like I've always been in love with Kirsty MacColl and with her voice. And some of my earliest kind of memories as the music fan that I became was hearing her sing with the Wonder Stuff, or Fairy Tale of New York, or singing with Morrissey, or her own material. And I loved her voice so much. And when the band was first starting, I had this fantasy of someday we would get Kirsty MacColl to sing on a track. And she passed away almost 20 years ago. So obviously that tragic circumstances, so that was never meant to be. But I feel like one of the wonderful things about being a musician, being a songwriter, a performer, is that kind of coming back around to what we were talking about with, film stars and watching their films, and they get to live forever if you keep watching the films. That how we keep musicians alive by playing their songs. We keep them alive by playing them on the radio or covering them, and kind of, it's like their spirit is kind of in the room with us, even if their bodies are long since kind of become dust. So, but this is a song by a band called Crowded House that I'm rather fond of. So it goes like this.
Love can make you weak, can make you run for cover. Roots that spread so deep, give life to frozen ground. Something so strong could carry us away. Something so strong could carry us today. Turning in my sleep, love can leave you cold. The taste of jealousy is like a lust for gold. Something so strong could carry us away. Something so strong could carry us today. I've been feeling so much older. Frame me and hang me on the wall. And I've seen you fall into the same traps. These things are happening to us all. Something so strong could carry us away. Something so strong could carry us today. Something so strong. Something so strong, something so strong, something so strong.
Something so strong. I love that song. Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it.
It's good to see you. Thanks for having me.
It's good to see you, and good luck with the record and the shows. I know you got a few here in Seattle, and I'm glad you'll be able to get out and tour. And I'm glad we're able to have sessions here at KEXP, part of our KEXP 50 as well, our celebration of being on the air 50 years. Thanks for all the support. You can always go to KEXP.org to do just that, to support these sessions and this radio station. I'm John Richards from KEXP.
Discover new music at listener-powered KEXP.org.